Let's keep this one for real family only, my stepson Jason said with a smile, just loud enough for everyone to hear. I stood there holding the edge of my cardigan while 3 generations of people I had loved for nearly 2 decades shifted closer together in front of the camera. Nobody looked surprised. Nobody objected. In fact, a few of them smiled as if Jason had simply pointed out something obvious. I stepped back without saying a word. The photographer adjusted his lens. The children moved into the front row. Monica fixed her hair. Abigail glanced toward me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Then the camera flashed. The family portrait was taken without me. They thought they had erased me from a photograph. They had no idea what they were about to lose. I'm glad you're here. Stay with me until the end of my story and tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to know how far this story reaches. The gathering was supposed to be a celebration. Walter's family held one every summer at the lake property his parents had purchased decades ago. The tradition had survived weddings, relocations, new grandchildren, and even Walter's passing 3 years earlier. At 72, I still made the 3-hour drive every year because I believed family traditions mattered. I believed showing up mattered. The July afternoon was beautiful. The sky was clear. The lake reflected sunlight like polished glass. Children ran across the grass carrying paper plates stacked with barbecue and watermelon slices. Laughter drifted through the warm air. From a distance, it probably looked like the perfect American family reunion. I had spent the morning helping prepare food. I arranged fruit trays, refilled drink containers, set folding chairs beneath shade trees. The same things I had done every year. No one asked me to help. I simply did. Old habits are hard to break, especially when those habits are built on love. Walter and I had been married for 18 years before he passed away. I wasn't Jason and Monica's biological mother, but I had attended graduations, birthdays, baby showers, and countless holidays. I remembered favorite meals. I remembered allergies. I remembered every grandchild's birthday. Yet standing there beside the photographer, watching them organize themselves without me, I suddenly felt like a guest who had overstayed her welcome. "Eleanor, could you hand me that cooler?" Monica asked a few minutes later, as though nothing unusual had happened. Her voice was cheerful, casual. I picked up the cooler and carried it across the lawn. Not because I wanted to, because I needed a moment before speaking. My throat felt tight, not from anger, from realization. There's a difference. Anger arrives quickly. Realization settles slowly, like cold rain seeping through a roof you thought was solid. As the afternoon continued, I noticed things I had ignored for years. Small things, quiet things, conversations stopping when I approached, plans discussed without including me, family jokes I didn't understand because nobody had bothered to tell me the story behind them. Perhaps none of it would have mattered on its own, but together, they formed a picture far clearer than the one taken by the photographer. For the first time, I wondered whether I had mistaken tolerance for acceptance, whether I had spent years believing I belonged somewhere that had never truly made room for me. Late that afternoon, someone printed a copy of the family photo from a portable printer brought for the event. The picture passed from hand to hand. People laughed and admired it. When it finally reached me, I stared at the image for several seconds. Walter's children, Walter's grandchildren, Walter's legacy, everyone smiling beneath the summer sun. There was only one person missing, me. I drove home that evening with the photograph resting on the passenger seat beside me. The sun was beginning to disappear behind the hills, turning the sky shades of gold and pale orange. Normally, I enjoyed that drive. Walter and I had traveled that same highway dozens of times over the years. We would stop at the same diner halfway home, order coffee, and talk about everything from family news to retirement plans. That evening, the road felt longer, quieter. The photograph remained where I had placed it. I did not look at it again. I did not need to. The image had already settled into my memory. When I arrived home, I unlocked the front door and stepped into the silence. My house was not large, but every room carried traces of the life Walter and I had built together. The grandfather clock in the hallway, the framed vacation photos above the fireplace, the worn leather chair where he used to read every evening. 3 years had passed since his death, yet some habits remained impossible to break. I still found myself glancing toward that chair whenever something important happened, as though he might be sitting there waiting to hear about it. I placed my purse on the kitchen counter and started the coffee maker. The familiar sound filled the room. For a few minutes, I focused on ordinary things. Washing a plate, folding a dish towel, straightening a stack of mail. Small tasks, quiet tasks, the kind that help a person think. Eventually, I opened the photograph again. I studied each face carefully. Jason stood in the center, Monica beside him, their children smiling toward the camera. A picture of unity, a picture of belonging. I noticed something strange then. Not what was in the photograph, what was missing from it. Not just me. There was no trace of the 18 years I had spent helping that family. No trace of school events I attended. No trace of holidays I organized. No trace of birthday cakes, graduation gifts, emergency loans, or weekends spent babysitting grandchildren so exhausted parents could rest. Looking at that picture, it was as if none of it had ever happened. I set the photograph down and walked into my study. A wooden cabinet stood against the far wall. Inside were dozens of family albums. I pulled several onto the desk and began turning pages. There I was holding newborn grandchildren, standing beside birthday cakes, cheering at soccer games, decorating Christmas trees, year after year, memory after memory. In nearly every photograph, I was present, smiling, participating, belonging. At least I thought I belonged. Around 10 o'clock that night, I found an album from 12 years earlier. Walter and I were attending Abigail's elementary school play. I remembered that evening clearly. Jason had been working late. Monica was out of town. Walter and I had been the only family members in the audience. Abigail had run straight into our arms afterward. A folded note slipped from between the pages as I turned them. Curious, I unfolded it. The handwriting was childish. It was Abigail's. "Thank you, Grandma Eleanor, for always coming when everyone else is busy. I love you." I sat there staring at those words for a long time. They warmed me. They hurt me. Most of all, they reminded me of something important. Not everyone in that family had forgotten what I had done. Not everyone saw me as an outsider. For the first time since the reunion, I felt something other than sadness. Clarity. The photograph had not created a problem. It had revealed one. And once a truth reveals itself, it becomes impossible to ignore. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. Sunlight filtered through the kitchen window as I poured a cup of coffee and sat at the small table Walter had built years ago. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that allows old memories to rise to the surface. I thought about all the moments that had seemed insignificant at the time. Little comments, small exclusions, tiny disappointments that I had brushed aside because I wanted peace more than answers. Looking back, the pattern was impossible to miss. A few months after Walter passed away, Jason created a new family group chat. I only learned about it because Abigail accidentally mentioned a conversation everyone else seemed to know about. Monica quickly explained that they had forgotten to add me. I believed her. Then it happened again 6 months later with a different group. Another explanation, another apology, another moment I convinced myself not to take personally. There was the Thanksgiving dinner when the seating arrangement somehow left me at the far end of the table beside distant relatives while Jason, Monica, and the grandchildren sat together in the center. There was the family vacation to Colorado that I only discovered through photographs posted online. Monica later told me they assumed I would not enjoy the altitude. The explanation sounded reasonable, yet nobody had actually asked me. Over the years, I became skilled at accepting explanations, perhaps too skilled. I told myself families were complicated. I told myself people were busy. I told myself that grief after Walter's death had changed everyone. What I never considered was that some people had simply become comfortable treating me as optional. Around noon, I drove into town to run errands. The grocery store was crowded with weekend shoppers. I moved slowly through the aisles, checking items off a handwritten list. As I reached for a carton of milk, I heard someone call my name. It was Carol Mitchell, a longtime family friend. Carol had known Walter for more than 30 years. We exchanged hugs and spoke for several minutes. Eventually, she smiled and said, "I saw the reunion pictures. It looked like everyone was there." The words were innocent. She meant nothing by them. Still, something inside me tightened. Everyone was there. That was exactly what the photograph suggested. I smiled politely and changed the subject. But her words followed me through the rest of the day. That evening, I opened one of the old photo albums again. This time, I paid attention to the details rather than the events. I noticed who stood beside me, who looked toward me, who included me naturally. One face appeared over and over again. Abigail. As a child, she had held my hand during family gatherings. As a teenager, She often sat beside me during holidays. Even recently, she was one of the few people who still called just to check on me. The realization brought me unexpected comfort. Not every relationship had been built on obligation. Some had been genuine. As I closed the album, my phone vibrated on the table. A new text message appeared. The sender's name made me pause. Abigail. The message was short. Grandma Eleanor, are you home tomorrow? I would really like to talk to you about something important. I stared at the screen for several seconds. Something in the wording felt different. Careful, serious, almost hesitant. A feeling I could not explain settled over me. The photograph had already revealed more than anyone intended. Now it seemed another piece of the puzzle was about to fall into place. Abigail arrived the following afternoon carrying a small paper bag from a local bakery. The gesture made me smile because it reminded me of something Walter used to do whenever he knew a conversation might be difficult. He always believed people spoke more honestly over coffee and pastries. We settled into the sunroom overlooking the backyard. For several minutes, we talked about ordinary things. Her work, the weather, a neighbor who had recently moved away. Yet I could tell something weighed on her mind. She kept turning her coffee cup slowly between her hands. Finally, she looked up. Grandma Eleanor, I need to tell you something, and I am not sure how. Her voice was gentle, careful. The room suddenly felt very still. I nodded and waited. After the reunion, I overheard Dad and Aunt Monica talking. She paused. They did not know I was there. I felt my stomach tighten slightly. Not from fear, from recognition. Sometimes the truth announces itself before it arrives. What did they say? I asked quietly. Abigail lowered her eyes. They were talking about the family photo. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The memory of that afternoon returned immediately. The bright sunlight, the camera flash, the empty space where I should have been standing. Dad said it was easier this way. Abigail continued. He said people would ask fewer questions if the photo only included blood relatives. I stared out the window toward the flower beds Walter and I had planted years earlier. A cardinal landed briefly on the fence before flying away again. I focused on that small movement while Abigail's words settled in my mind. Easier this way. Not accidental. Not misunderstood. Intentional. Abigail took a deep breath. Then Aunt Monica laughed and said eventually none of it would matter anyway. My attention returned immediately. What did she mean? Abigail hesitated. She said once everything is settled, you will not really be part of the family anymore. The words were not shouted. They were not cruel in the dramatic way people imagine cruelty. They were calm, casual, almost administrative. Somehow that made them hurt more. I thanked Abigail for telling me. She looked relieved, though concern still lingered. In her expression, I almost did not say anything, she admitted. But it did not feel right. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. You did the right thing. After a few moments, she added something else. There was another part of the conversation. I waited. Dad said Grandpa left everything organized. He sounded very confident about it. The statement caught my attention immediately. Walter had always been organized, but he was also private about financial matters. After his death, I handled my own affairs carefully and independently. Jason had never shown much interest in details before. Why was he suddenly so confident now? Abigail could not answer that question. She only knew what she had heard. Still, the conversation revealed something important. For years I had assumed distance and neglect were the result of grief, time, and changing priorities. Now a different possibility emerged. What if some people were not merely excluding me emotionally? What if they had already decided my role in the family was nearing its expiration date? After Abigail left that evening, I sat alone in the quiet house. The shadows grew longer across the living room floor. On the mantel stood a photograph of Walter smiling beside the lake years earlier. I studied his face and remembered something he often said whenever a problem seemed confusing. Pay attention to patterns, Eleanor. Patterns tell the truth long before people do. For the first time, I began to wonder if the pattern was leading somewhere much larger than a family photograph. The following week passed quietly, at least on the surface. I continued my normal routines. I watered the flowers, paid bills, met friends for lunch. Anyone looking from the outside would have assumed nothing had changed. Yet beneath that calm exterior, questions continued to grow. Walter had always believed that important decisions should be documented properly. He trusted preparation more than promises. The more I thought about Abigail's comments, the more I remembered conversations Walter and I had shared during the final years of his life. He never spoke dramatically about money. He viewed it as a tool, nothing more. Still, he cared deeply about protecting the people he loved. One Tuesday morning, while organizing files in my study, I came across an old leather folder labeled estate planning. The folder contained documents, notes, and contact information. One business card immediately caught my attention. Richard Coleman, Walter's attorney. I had not spoken with Richard in more than a year. We exchanged holiday cards occasionally, but there had been no reason for formal meetings recently. I turned the card over in my hand for several moments before placing it on my desk. Something told me it was time for a conversation. The next day, I called his office. His assistant recognized my name immediately and scheduled an appointment for the following week. After hanging up, I felt unexpectedly relieved. Not because I expected answers, because I was finally moving forward instead of replaying old memories. During the days leading up to the meeting, several small incidents continued to attract my attention. Jason called once, but only to ask whether I planned to attend a birthday party for one of the younger grandchildren. The conversation lasted less than 3 minutes. He never mentioned the reunion, never mentioned the photograph, never asked how I was doing. Monica sent a group email about holiday plans. Everyone received personalized notes except me. My section contained only 2 sentences and a date. Individually, none of these things seemed significant. Together, they reinforced the same pattern. Distance, detachment, assumptions. By the time my appointment arrived, I felt strangely calm. Richard's office occupied the 3rd floor of a brick building downtown. The waiting room looked exactly as I remembered. Dark wood furniture, framed certificates, shelves filled with legal books. Richard greeted me warmly and invited me into his office. For several minutes, we discussed ordinary matters. Retirement, health, mutual friends. Then his expression became more serious. "What brings you in today, Eleanor?" he asked. I considered the question carefully. "I think there are some things I need to understand." Richard nodded. There was no pressure in his manner, no urgency, just patience. I explained the family gathering, the exclusion, the conversation Abigail had overheard. Richard listened without interruption. When I finished, he folded his hands and studied me thoughtfully. "Walter always worried about one thing," he said at last. My attention sharpened immediately. What was that? Richard opened a file drawer beside his desk. He worried that people might eventually confuse entitlement with gratitude. The room suddenly felt very quiet. Richard removed a thick folder and placed it gently on the desk between us. My name was printed across the front. Beneath it rested several documents I had not seen in years. For the first time, I began to realize that Walter may have anticipated far more than I ever imagined. Richard opened the folder slowly, as though he understood the weight carried by every page inside it. I sat quietly across from him while sunlight filtered through the office window. For years, I had assumed I understood the broad outlines of Walter's estate planning. We had discussed retirement accounts, property ownership, and charitable donations. What I had never fully appreciated was how carefully he had structured everything long before his health began to decline. Richard adjusted his glasses and reviewed several documents before sliding one toward me. "Walter updated these arrangements 2 years before he passed away," he explained. I studied the pages. Legal language filled the document, but the essential details became clear surprisingly quickly. Walter had established a trust designed to provide long-term financial security. The combined value of the trust, investment accounts, real estate holdings, and other assets had grown significantly over the years. Richard showed me the most recent valuation summary. I stared at the number for several seconds. More than $3 million. Even though I knew Walter had planned carefully, the figure still surprised me. Richard nodded when he saw my reaction. The assets performed very well over time. I leaned back in my chair, absorbing the information. Then another realization surfaced. Who controls all of this? I asked. Richard's answer came immediately. You do. The room felt unusually quiet after those 2 words. Richard continued explaining the structure. Walter had named me as the primary decision-maker regarding future distributions. Certain charitable gifts were already protected. A few family provisions existed as well. Beyond those arrangements, substantial discretion belonged entirely to me. Not Jason, not Monica, me. I thought about Abigail's comments. I thought about the confidence Jason had apparently displayed while discussing future outcomes. Confidence often comes from assumptions. Assumptions sometimes become dangerous when they are mistaken for facts. Richard reached into the folder again and removed a sealed envelope. My name appeared on the front in Walter's handwriting. Seeing it instantly tightened my throat. I recognized every curve of those letters. Walter had written thousands of notes during our marriage. Grocery lists, anniversary cards, birthday messages. Even after 3 years, his handwriting remained familiar. He asked that I keep this with the estate documents, Richard said quietly. He wanted you to receive it if you ever felt uncertain about your place in the family. My hands trembled slightly as I opened the envelope. Inside was a short letter. The words were simple, direct, entirely Walter. He wrote that family should be measured by loyalty, kindness, and presence rather than biology alone. He thanked me for standing beside him through every challenge life had presented. He reminded me that true relationships reveal themselves through actions, not titles. Then came a sentence I read twice. If anyone ever treats you as though you do not belong, trust what you see, not what you hope. I lowered the letter slowly. For a moment, neither Richard nor I spoke. Everything suddenly felt connected. The photograph, the exclusions, the conversations, the assumptions. The pattern Walter once warned me to notice was no longer hidden. Richard finally broke the silence. You do not need to make any decisions today. I nodded. He was right. I was not angry. I was not emotional. In fact, I felt something far more powerful. Clarity. For weeks I had been searching for answers. Now I had them. As I gathered the documents and prepared to leave, one thought remained with me. Some people believed the future had already been decided. They were about to discover how wrong they were. When I returned home from Richard's office, I placed Walter's letter inside the top drawer of my desk and sat quietly for a long time. The afternoon sunlight stretched across the hardwood floor. Outside, a lawn mower hummed somewhere down the street. Everything looked ordinary, yet something fundamental had changed. For weeks, I had been searching for clarity. Now I had it. What surprised me most was how calm I felt. There was no dramatic moment, no burst of anger, no desire to confront anyone. In fact, the more I thought about everything that had happened, the more convinced I became that arguments would accomplish nothing. The photograph had already told me what I needed to know. The conversations Abigail overheard had confirmed it. Walter's letter had removed any remaining doubt. That evening, Jason called. His name appeared on my phone screen while I was preparing dinner. I answered politely. He spent several minutes discussing plans for an upcoming family birthday gathering. He talked about restaurant reservations, guest lists, and schedules. His tone was friendly, relaxed, as though nothing unusual had happened over the previous month. I listened carefully, waiting, expecting perhaps a mention of the reunion, a simple acknowledgement, an apology. It never came. When the conversation ended, he thanked me for always being flexible. Then he hung up. I stood in my kitchen staring at the silent phone. Flexible. The word lingered in my mind. For years, flexibility had been mistaken for acceptance. Patience had been mistaken for weakness. Silence had been mistaken for agreement. The following morning, I made another appointment with Richard. This one was different. When I arrived at his office, he seemed unsurprised, almost as though he had anticipated my decision. We reviewed documents for nearly 2 hours. Every provision, every beneficiary designation, every future distribution. Richard explained the options carefully. There was no pressure, no recommendations, only information. The decisions belonged entirely to me. Several times he asked whether I wanted additional time to think. My answer remained the same. I had already spent years thinking. What I was doing now was acting on what I had learned. We updated several sections, clarified others, strengthened language where necessary. Throughout the meeting, I felt remarkably steady. Not because the decisions were easy, because they were honest. I found myself returning repeatedly to a question Walter once asked during a conversation many years earlier. If you could see people's true feelings, would you keep making the same choices? At the time, I thought the question was philosophical. Now it felt practical. By late afternoon, the paperwork was complete. Richard reviewed everything one final time before placing the documents in a secure file. Are you comfortable with these changes? He asked. I considered the question carefully. Then I nodded. Yes. And for the first time in weeks, I truly meant it. As I left the office, a strange sense of peace settled over me. Not satisfaction, not revenge, Peace. The future no longer depended on assumptions made by other people. It depended on choices I had made with open eyes. Somewhere, Jason and Monica continued believing the story they had written for themselves. They still assumed they understood how everything would unfold. What they did not realize was that the ending had already changed. They simply had not heard about it yet. Nearly 6 weeks passed before the consequences of those decisions began to surface. During that time, life remained surprisingly ordinary. Autumn arrived. The mornings grew cooler. Leaves collected along the edges of my driveway. I spent more time reading in the sunroom, and less time worrying about people who had already revealed how they felt. The distance from Jason and Monica continued. Neither seemed concerned by it. In fact, they appeared more comfortable than ever. Social media photographs showed family dinners, birthday celebrations, and weekend outings. Sometimes I appeared in the invitations. Sometimes I did not. Either way, I stopped measuring my worth by whether someone remembered to include me. One Saturday afternoon, I attended a birthday lunch for one of the younger grandchildren. The gathering took place at a restaurant about 20 miles from my home. Everyone was polite, friendly, even, yet something felt different. Jason seemed unusually attentive. Monica asked several questions about my health, my travel plans, and whether I had considered downsizing my house. The sudden interest struck me as odd. For years, neither had shown much curiosity about my personal affairs. During dessert, I noticed Jason exchanging a glance with Monica. A silent conversation seemed to pass between them. Then Jason leaned forward. "Have you talked with Richard lately?" he asked casually. The question arrived so unexpectedly that I nearly laughed. There it was, the first crack in the performance. I took a sip of iced tea before answering. "Not recently," I said calmly. The statement was technically true. My last meeting had been weeks earlier. Jason nodded, but his expression revealed disappointment. Monica quickly changed the subject. The moment lasted only seconds, yet it told me everything I needed to know. Somewhere, somehow, questions had begun circulating. They did not have answers. A few days later, Abigail called. Her voice carried a mixture of frustration and disbelief. "Dad has been asking strange questions," she said. "About legal documents. About trusts. About whether Grandpa left instructions." I listened quietly. Abigail continued. Apparently, a conversation among extended family members had triggered unexpected speculation. Someone had mentioned estate planning. Someone else had referenced Richard's office. No concrete information existed, but uncertainty had entered the picture. Uncertainty has a way of making confident people nervous. 2 evenings later, my phone rang. "Jason," I answered. His voice sounded tense. Not angry, concerned. "I wanted to ask you something," he began. There was a long pause. "Have there been any changes to anything important?" I almost smiled, not because I enjoyed his discomfort, because the question itself revealed so much. For years, I had been treated as though my thoughts, feelings, and presence were secondary. Now suddenly my decisions mattered. "Why do you ask?" I replied. Another pause followed. Longer this time. "No reason," he said eventually. "Just curious." Curious. The same family that had quietly removed me from photographs was now searching for information they assumed belonged to them. We ended the conversation politely. Afterward, I sat beside the living room window watching darkness settle across the neighborhood. For the first time, I realized something important. Jason and Monica were not reacting to a loss of money. They did not even know the details yet. They were reacting to the loss of certainty. The future they had taken for granted no longer felt guaranteed. And that uncertainty was only the beginning. By early December, the uncertainty that had been quietly spreading through the family finally reached its destination. I did not learn about it through lawyers or formal meetings. I learned about it the same way I had learned many other important things over the years, through people revealing themselves. The annual holiday gathering was held at a rented event space overlooking the river. Twinkling lights lined the windows. Christmas music drifted softly through the room. Children ran between tables carrying cookies and cups of hot chocolate. From a distance, everything appeared festive and warm. When I arrived, several relatives greeted me kindly. Abigail hugged me first. Her smile was genuine, as always. Jason and Monica approached a few minutes later. Their expressions seemed carefully controlled. Polite, measured, yet something had changed. The confidence I once saw in them was gone. During dinner, conversations moved from holiday plans to family memories. Stories about Walter surfaced naturally. People laughed, shared old photographs, recalled vacations and celebrations from years past. At one point, someone projected family pictures onto a large screen. Images flashed one after another. Birthdays, graduations, anniversaries. Then a photograph appeared that immediately caught my attention. It was one Abigail had submitted. Walter and I stood together in the backyard years earlier, surrounded by family. Everyone smiling. Everyone included. The room grew quiet for a moment, as people looked at the image. Then Abigail spoke. Grandpa always said family was about who showed up for each other. Her words were simple, yet they seemed to land with unusual weight. Several people nodded. I noticed Jason looking down at his plate. Later that evening, as guests began gathering coats and saying goodnight, Jason asked if we could speak privately. We stepped into a quiet hallway near the entrance. For several seconds, neither of us said anything. Finally, he looked at me, older than I remembered, more uncertain. I think I owe you an apology, he said. I listened without interrupting. He admitted that he had taken many things for granted. He admitted that after Walter died, he assumed certain outcomes were inevitable. Most importantly, he admitted that excluding me had become easier than appreciating me. The honesty surprised me, not because it erased the past, because it was the first truly honest conversation we had shared in years. When he finished, I thanked him for saying it. Nothing more, nothing less. Some apologies change everything. Others simply acknowledge reality. This one belonged to the second category. A few minutes later, I returned to the main room and found Abigail waiting beside the photo display. She slipped her arm through mine and pointed toward the image on the screen. "That one is my favorite," she said. I smiled. It was mine too. A week later, I scheduled a professional family portrait session. Not a large event, not a public statement, just a gathering of people who consistently showed love, respect, and kindness. Abigail stood beside me. Close friends attended. Several relatives who had remained genuinely connected were there as well. When the photographer finished, he handed me a preview image. I studied it carefully. Nobody had been excluded. Nobody had been pushed aside. Nobody needed permission to belong. That framed photograph now sits above my fireplace. Every time I pass it, I remember something Walter understood long before I did. Family is not defined by blood, obligation, or expectation. Family is revealed by presence, by loyalty, by the people who stand beside you when there is nothing to gain. And in the end, that picture became worth far more than any inheritance ever could be.